If someone doesn't understand you and you stay anyway, desperately trying to make them see your truth, the problem is no longer them, it's you. The moment you start explaining yourself to someone who's already decided not to understand you, you're no longer communicating, you're begging. And Buddhism teaches that begging for respect is the fastest way to lose it. Listen carefully to this truth. If they wanted to understand, they would. Your explanations won't change a closed mind. They'll only drain your dignity. Your justifications won't open a shut heart. They'll only exhaust your soul. Your over-explaining won't earn you the validation you're seeking. It'll only prove to them that you don't value yourself. Because here's what nobody tells you. When you explain too much, when you justify your existence, when you defend your every choice to people who've already judged you, you're sending a message, not to them, to yourself. You're saying, my truth isn't enough. I'm not enough. I need their approval to validate my reality. And that, according to Buddhist wisdom, is where your suffering begins. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of all suffering. But we think attachment only means clinging to things, to people, to outcomes. We forget the most dangerous attachment of all. Attachment to being understood by those who refuse to understand. Attachment to being validated by those who've chosen not to see you. Attachment to explaining yourself to minds that closed the door before you even started speaking. This video is going to be uncomfortable because I'm going to tell you 7 truths that you might not want to hear. 7 Buddhist teachings that will shatter the illusion that if you just explain better, just say it right this time, just make them understand, everything will be okay. It won't. But what will happen when you stop explaining is something far more powerful. You'll reclaim your energy, you'll restore your dignity, you'll remember that your truth doesn't need defense, it only needs to be lived. So if you've been exhausting yourself trying to make people understand you, this is your permission to stop. This is your wake-up call. This is your path back to self-respect. Let's begin. Here's the first truth. When you over-explain yourself, you're not being thorough. You're revealing that deep down, you don't believe you're worthy of being heard the first time. People with strong self-respect speak once, clearly, calmly, and then they stop. They don't repeat. They don't justify. They don't scramble to make sure everyone understood perfectly. Because they know something you're still learning. Their truth stands on its own. It doesn't need a defense attorney. But when your self-worth is low, when you carry the wound of never being enough, every conversation becomes a trial. You're the defendant. They're the jury. And you keep presenting more evidence, more explanations, more justifications, hoping that this time, finally, they'll rule in your favor. They won't. Because the verdict was decided before you opened your mouth, not based on what you said, but based on how you said it, with desperation, with need, with the energy of someone who doesn't believe in their own value. Buddhism teaches that the energy you bring to a moment matters more than the words you speak. And when you bring the energy of, please understand me, please validate me, please see that I'm right, people don't hear your logic, they feel your lack of self-belief, and it repels them. Think about the people in your life whose words carry weight, the ones everyone listens to, the ones whose opinions matter without them having to force them. Are they the ones explaining endlessly, justifying constantly, repeating themselves until everyone agrees? No, they speak their truth once, simply, directly. And then they let it exist in the space without chasing it, without defending it, without drowning it in explanations. Why? Because they believe in what they're saying. They trust that their perspective has value. They know that if someone doesn't get it, that's okay. Not everyone has to. Their worth isn't determined by universal understanding. But you explain, you justify, you clarify, you rephrase, you give context, you add background. You make sure they know every detail so they can't possibly misunderstand. And with every additional sentence, you're not making yourself clearer. You're making yourself smaller. You're saying, my initial truth wasn't enough. Let me give you more. Let me prove to you that I'm worth listening to. Let me earn the right to be heard. And Buddhism would ask you this. Why do you need to earn something that should be freely given? Why are you working so hard for the bare minimum of being listened to? The answer is always the same. Because somewhere along the way, someone taught you that you're not worthy unless you prove it, that your voice doesn't matter unless you fight for it, that your truth isn't valid unless everyone agrees with it. And now you're exhausted. Exhausted from explaining your boundaries to people who keep crossing them. Exhausted from justifying your feelings to people who invalidate them. Exhausted from defending your choices to people who've already decided you're wrong. But here's what you need to hear. The people who require constant explanations are not confused. They're controlling. They're not asking for clarity. They're asking for compliance. They don't want to understand you. They want you to doubt yourself. Because when you're busy explaining, you're not standing firm. When you're defending, you're not advancing. When you're justifying, you're not living. Think about this. Have you ever noticed that the more you explain something to certain people, the less they seem to get it? You keep adding detail, providing examples, breaking it down into simpler terms, and yet somehow they're still confused. That's not confusion. That's rejection disguised as misunderstanding. They understand you perfectly. They just don't agree. And instead of saying that, they keep you trapped in explanation mode. Because as long as you're explaining, you're questioning yourself, you're second-guessing, you're wondering if maybe you're not making sense. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe you need to try harder. And that's exactly where they want you, in self-doubt, in uncertainty, in the exhausting cycle of proving yourself over and over while never quite being enough. Buddhism teaches that when you speak your truth, you are not responsible for how it lands. You are responsible for speaking it with integrity once and then releasing it. What someone does with it, how they receive it, whether they understand it, that's their journey, not yours. So ask yourself this. Who are you still explaining yourself to? Who are the people in your life that demand endless justification for your existence, your feelings, your boundaries, your choices? And then ask the harder question. Why are you giving it to them? Is it because you believe if you just find the right words, they'll finally see you? Is it because you think their understanding will somehow heal the wound of not feeling seen? It won't. Their understanding won't fill the hole. Only your own self-belief can do that. Their validation won't make you whole. Only your own self-respect will. And the moment you stop explaining yourself to people who've chosen not to understand, you take your power back. You stop outsourcing your worth to their approval. You stop letting their closed minds determine your value. You simply state your truth once and walk away in dignity. Because the Buddha teaches us this, you cannot convince someone to respect you. Respect is given freely or not at all. And when you're explaining, begging, justifying, you're not commanding respect. You're forfeiting it. So today, make this decision. I will speak my truth once, clearly, calmly, and I will not dilute it with desperate explanations. I will not shrink it with endless justifications. I will not defend it to people who've already decided not to honor it. I will speak, and then I will be still. And in that stillness, I will remember something I forgot. My truth doesn't need a defense. It only needs to be true. The second truth is even harder to accept. After you speak your truth, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Silence. Not because you have nothing more to say, but because you have nothing left to prove. In Buddhist practice, there's a teaching about sacred silence, the space after words where truth settles, where meaning deepens, where the other person is given room to actually receive what was said instead of preparing their defense. But we've lost this art. We speak our truth and then immediately fill the silence with explanations, clarifications, softening, backtracking. We're so uncomfortable with the pause that we rush to fill it, unknowingly eroding the very truth we just spoke. It's like planting a seed and then immediately digging it up to check if it's growing. The constant interference prevents the natural process from unfolding. When you speak a boundary and then immediately explain why you set it, you weaken it. When you share a feeling and then rush to justify why you feel that way, you invalidate it. When you make a decision and then scramble to make everyone comfortable with it, you undermine it. The truth spoken and left to stand holds power. The truth spoken and then drowned in explanation loses it. Think about the last time you set a boundary. Maybe you told someone, "I can't do that anymore." And what happened next? Did you let that statement breathe? Or did you immediately follow it with, "It's just that I'm really overwhelmed right now, and I know you need help, but I'm just so tired and I hope you understand, and it's not that I don't want to," but with every word after the initial boundary, you gave them an opening, an opportunity to debate, to convince, to push back. Your boundary went from a firm line to a negotiation. But what if you had simply said, "I can't do that anymore," and then stopped? What if you let the silence hold the weight of that truth? The silence would have been uncomfortable for both of you. They might have asked why. They might have looked confused. They might have tried to fill the space with questions, with pushback, with guilt. And your job in that moment wouldn't be to rescue them from the discomfort. Your job would be to hold the silence, to let your boundary stand without defense. Because Buddhism teaches that discomfort is not your enemy, it's information. And when you rush to eliminate someone else's discomfort with your truth, you're sending a message. My truth is negotiable. My boundary is flexible. If you seem uncomfortable enough, I'll take it back. And they learn, not that you have boundaries, but that your boundaries can be moved if they apply enough pressure. This is why people pleasers are exhausted, not from setting boundaries, but from constantly defending them, explaining them, softening them, apologizing for them. The boundary isn't the problem. The lack of silence after it is. Powerful people set boundaries with silence. They state what is, and then they stop. The silence is not empty. It's full of self-respect, full of certainty, full of the message, this is not up for debate. But you fill the silence with justification. And in doing so, you open a courtroom when you meant to close a door. Here's what happens in the silence you're afraid of. The other person is forced to sit with your truth without your help. They can't manipulate your words because you've stopped giving them material. They can't twist your meaning because you've said exactly what you meant and nothing more. The silence forces them to decide, will they respect this boundary or won't they? Will they honor this truth or reject it? And that decision, that's theirs to make, not yours to control through explanation. Most people can't handle this. The silence feels cruel. It feels harsh. It feels like you're being cold, shutting down, refusing to communicate. But it's not cold. It's clear. It's not harsh. It's honest. It's not shutting down. It's standing firm. The Buddha said, 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Truth reveals itself. It doesn't need your constant explanation. It doesn't require your defense. It simply is. And those who are ready to see it will. Those who aren't won't. And you exhausting yourself trying to make blind eyes see is not noble. It's self-abandonment. So when you speak your truth, practice the pause. Say what you need to say, and then close your mouth. Let the discomfort sit. Let the silence stretch. Let the other person grapple with what you've said without your help. You'll notice something interesting. Some people will respect the silence. They'll sit with your truth, consider it, and either accept it or walk away. These are your people, the ones who can handle your boundaries without you having to soften them. Others will try to fill the silence for you. They'll ask endless questions, demand explanations, push for reasons, guilt you into justifying. These are not your people. They're the ones who need you to doubt yourself because your certainty threatens their control. And in that silence, you'll learn who truly respects you, not by what they say, but by how they handle your boundaries without your explanation. Ask yourself this: what am I afraid will happen if I stop explaining? What do I think I'll lose by letting my truth stand alone? Usually the answer is They'll be upset. They won't understand. They'll think I'm mean. They'll leave. And Buddhism would gently ask, and if they do, what have you really lost? Someone who couldn't respect a simple boundary? Someone who needed you to weaken your truth for their comfort? Someone who required endless explanation just to hear you? You haven't lost. You've been freed. So practice this today. Speak your truth once, clearly, and then be silent. Let the discomfort be theirs to sit with, not yours to fix. Because the silence after truth is not emptiness, it's power, and you're ready to claim it. Here's the third truth. You weren't born explaining yourself. You learned to. Somewhere in your childhood, someone taught you that your truth wasn't enough on its own, that your feelings needed justification, that your needs required defense, that your existence needed explanation. Maybe it was a parent who constantly questioned you. Why do you feel that way? That doesn't make sense. Explain yourself until you learn that feelings aren't valid unless you can intellectually defend them. Maybe it was a critical teacher, a dismissive sibling, a judgmental peer, someone who made you feel that your perspective was automatically wrong unless you could prove it right. Or maybe it was more subtle. Maybe you grew up in a home where peace was more important than truth, where you learned that your authentic self created discomfort, so you started explaining, softening, shrinking yourself to keep everyone else comfortable. Buddhism teaches that suffering is often inherited. The patterns we carry were handed down, not chosen. Your parents learned to people please, so they taught you. Their parents learned to over-explain, so they passed it on. Generation after generation, the wound of "you are not enough" gets deeper. But here's what you need to understand. Just because you learned it doesn't mean you have to keep it. Children don't naturally over-explain. Watch a toddler. They state what they want without justification. I don't like that. I want this. No. Simple. Direct. True. They haven't learned yet that their truth needs a lawyer. But then the world teaches them. Don't say no without a good reason. You can't feel sad. You have nothing to be sad about. Explain why you think that. And slowly, the child learns. My truth is not self-evident. I must justify my existence. And they carry that into adulthood, into relationships where they explain why they need respect, into jobs where they justify why they deserve boundaries, into friendships where they defend why they can't be available 24/7. They become adults who can't say, I'm not comfortable with that, without adding, because of this trauma I had, and this experience I went through, and this is why it triggers me, and I hope you understand. When the truth is simply, I'm not comfortable with that. Full stop. Buddhism teaches that we must unlearn what trauma taught us, and if trauma taught you that you're only worthy when you're explaining, justifying, proving, then your healing is in the opposite, speaking simply, standing firmly, explaining nothing. This doesn't mean you become cold or uncommunicative. It means you become clear. You share what needs to be shared and nothing more. You don't load your truth with so much context that it collapses under its own weight. Think about the people you learned this from, the ones who made you feel like your truth needed defense. What were they really doing? They were keeping you small. When you're busy explaining, you're not challenging. When you're justifying, you're not standing up. When you're defending yourself, you're on the back foot, not advancing forward. It's a control tactic. And you internalized it so deeply that now you do it to yourself. They don't even need to be in the room anymore. You've become your own interrogator. Why do I feel this way? Is this valid? Can I prove this? What if they think I'm wrong? You question your own reality before you even speak it. You dilute your own truth before you share it. You shrink your own boundaries before anyone even challenges them. And Buddhism would ask, who are you protecting by making yourself smaller? Not yourself, them. You're protecting them from the discomfort of seeing you fully. You're managing their reaction before they even have one. You're doing the emotional labor of making your existence palatable. But you weren't put on this earth to be palatable. You were put here to be authentic. And authenticity doesn't come with footnotes and disclaimers. So how do you unlearn this? First, you notice. Notice when you're about to over-explain. Feel the urge rising, the need to give more context, more background, more justification, and pause. Ask yourself, have I already said what needs to be said? If the answer is yes, stop, close your mouth, breathe. Resist the urge to fill the silence with more words. It will feel wrong at first, like you're being rude, like you're not being thorough, like you're going to be misunderstood. That feeling is the old programming, the learned behavior of, my truth is not enough. Sit with it. Don't act on it. Let the discomfort be there without rescuing yourself from it with more explanation. Second, practice short truths. Instead of, I can't come to the party because I've been really overwhelmed lately, and I need some time to recharge, and I hope you're not offended, but I just need space right now. Try, I can't make it, but thank you for inviting me. That's it. No explanation, no justification, no managing their potential disappointment. If they ask why, you can share more, but you don't owe them a dissertation on your mental state just to decline an invitation. Third, identify your over-explaining triggers. Is it when you're setting boundaries, when you're saying no, when you're expressing a feeling, when you're making a choice someone else doesn't like? Notice the pattern, and in those moments, remind yourself, my truth stands on its own. I do not need to defend it. This is the work. Not one conversation that fixes everything, but a daily practice of speaking less and trusting more. Trusting that you're allowed to have boundaries without explaining them. Trusting that your feelings are valid without justifying them. Trusting that your choices are yours to make without defending them. Buddhism teaches that liberation is not something you gain, it's something you remember. You remember that you were whole before the world taught you that you weren't. You remember that your truth mattered before anyone made you prove it. You remember who you were before you learned to shrink. And slowly, conversation by conversation, you stop explaining, you stop justifying, you stop defending, you simply speak and trust that truth, like water, finds its level. Here's the fourth truth, and it's going to shift everything. The people who truly value you won't require constant explanation. They'll understand you the first time, not because you're so articulate, but because they're actually listening. Buddhism teaches about right relationship, relationships that are aligned with your truth, that honor your wholeness, that see you clearly without you having to shrink or explain or perform. And in right relationship, communication is easy, not because there's no conflict, but because there's trust. You say what you mean, they hear what you said. If there's confusion, they ask for clarity, not to trap you, but to genuinely understand. But in wrong relationship, communication is exhausting. You say what you mean, they hear what they want. You clarify, they twist it. You explain again, they play confused. You break it down further, they act like you're speaking another language. And you start to believe the problem is you. You're not communicating clearly enough. You're not being articulate. You need to try harder, explain better, find different words. But the problem was never your communication. The problem is they're not listening. They don't want to understand. They want you to doubt yourself. Because when you're busy explaining, you're not noticing that they're the ones not meeting you halfway. When you're questioning your clarity, you're not questioning why they need so much clarification for something so simple. Think about the people in your life right now, the ones you have to explain everything to multiple times, the ones who constantly misunderstand your boundaries, the ones who need endless context before they can accept your feelings. Now think about the people who get you, the ones you can speak plainly with, the ones who hear you the first time, the ones who respect your no without needing to know why. What's the difference? Not you, not your communication skills, them, their willingness to actually listen, their respect for you as a person, their belief that you're worth hearing the first time. The right people won't make you work so hard to be heard. They'll lean in, they'll listen, they'll honor what you're saying, even if they disagree with it. They won't demand you convince them that your feelings are valid. They'll accept that your feelings are yours, and that's enough. The wrong people will make communication feel like climbing a mountain. Every conversation is effort. Every boundary needs a defense. Every feeling needs a justification. Every choice needs approval. And Buddhism would tell you this is not love. This is not friendship. This is not respect. This is control dressed up as confusion. Because truly confused people ask questions to understand. They seek clarity because they want to get it right. They come with curiosity, not challenge. But people using confusion as control ask questions to undermine. They seek clarity to poke holes. They come with skepticism, not openness. You can feel the difference. One feels like building a bridge. The other feels like defending a fortress. And you've been defending for so long, you forgot that real connection shouldn't feel like war. So, here's what you need to do. Start noticing who makes you explain endlessly and who understands immediately. The ones who understand immediately, keep them close. These are your people, the ones who prove that you're not bad at communicating. You're just communicating with the wrong people. The ones who require endless explanation, start pulling back. Not with drama, not with confrontation, just quietly. Stop working so hard to be understood by people who are choosing not to understand. You're not giving up on them. You're giving up on the exhausting pattern of explaining yourself into the ground, hoping for a shift that's never coming. Because here's what Buddhism teaches. You cannot force someone to see you. You cannot explain someone into respecting you. You cannot justify someone into valuing you. They either do or they don't. And when they don't, your explanations won't change that. They'll just drain you. I know this is hard to accept because you want to believe that if you just find the right words, the perfect explanation, the most logical breakdown, they'll finally get it. They won't. Not because you're not clear, but because they're not ready or willing or capable or interested. And that's not your failure. That's their limitation. Your job is not to make yourself understood by people who refuse to listen. Your job is to speak your truth and let it find the people who are ready to receive it. Think about a radio station. It's broadcasting constantly, clearly. But if someone's radio isn't tuned to that frequency, they won't hear it. The station doesn't scramble to broadcast louder, clearer, on every frequency at once. It just broadcasts. And those who are tuned in hear. You are broadcasting your truth. Some people are tuned in. They get you. Easy, effortless, clear. Others aren't tuned in. And no amount of you boosting your signal, changing your frequency, explaining your broadcast is going to make them hear what they're not positioned to receive. Stop exhausting yourself trying to force connection with people who aren't tuned to your frequency. Speak your truth clearly once and trust that the right people will hear it. The ones who don't, they're not your audience. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you wise. Buddhism teaches discernment, knowing who to invest your energy in, knowing when effort is loving and when it's just depletion, and over-explaining to people who won't listen. That's depletion disguised as communication. So today, ask yourself, who am I exhausting myself trying to make understand me? And what would happen if I stopped? Maybe they'd leave. Maybe they'd be upset. Maybe they'd accuse you of not caring, not trying, not communicating. Let them, because the people who truly want you in their life won't need you to prove your worth through endless explanation. They'll just see it and value it and honor it. And that's where you belong. Not in relationships where you're constantly on trial, but in connections where your truth is trusted the first time you speak it. The fifth truth might be the most liberating. You don't owe anyone the story behind your boundaries. You don't owe anyone the trauma that taught you to say no. You don't owe anyone access to your pain to justify your limits. Buddhism teaches about sacred privacy, the understanding that not everything needs to be shared, that some truths are meant to be held close, that your inner world is yours to protect, and you get to choose who earns access to it. But somewhere along the way, you learned the opposite. You learned that boundaries without explanation are rude, that no without a reason is selfish, that protecting your energy without giving everyone a detailed breakdown is cold. So you started sharing. too much, with people who hadn't earned it. You started explaining your boundaries by unpacking your trauma. I can't do that because when I was younger, I need space because I went through this thing. I don't like that because it reminds me of, and you thought you were being open, vulnerable, communicative, but you were actually doing something else. You were giving away your story to people who didn't deserve it. You were using your pain as currency to buy the right to have boundaries. And Buddhism would ask you this: why do you need to pay for something that should be free? Your boundaries are not negotiable items that require justification to exist. They are your sovereign right as a human being. You can have them simply because you want to. No backstory needed, no trauma required, no explanation owed. When you say, "I'm not comfortable with that," that is a complete sentence. It doesn't need, "because I was hurt before and now I'm triggered, and here's my entire therapeutic history to prove I'm not just being difficult." You're not being difficult. You're being boundaried, and that's allowed, even without a sob story to validate it. Here's what happens when you overshare to justify your boundaries. First, you give people ammunition. They learn exactly what hurts you, what triggers you, what you're afraid of, and the wrong people will use that against you. They'll poke at those wounds, test those boundaries, use your own story to manipulate you. Second, you set a precedent. You teach people that your boundaries are only valid if you can provide sufficient trauma to back them up. So next time you set a boundary without explaining, they push back. But why? What's the real reason? You're not telling me something. Because you trained them to expect your whole story every time you say no. Third, and most importantly, you exhaust yourself. Reliving your trauma every time you need to set a boundary is re-traumatizing. You're forced to revisit your pain just to justify your healing. And that's backwards. You should be able to say no without having to bleed to prove you're hurt. Buddhism teaches that healing happens in privacy, in the quiet spaces where you don't have to perform your pain for anyone, where you can simply be without explaining, without justifying, without making your wounds visible, to earn basic respect. And when you constantly overshare your story to justify your boundaries, you never get that privacy. You're always on display, always having to prove your pain is real enough, your trauma valid enough, your reasons good enough. But to whom? To people who, if they truly respected you, wouldn't need the explanation in the first place. Think about this. The people who love you, who truly honor you, they don't need to know your full story to respect your no. They trust that if you're setting a boundary, you have a good reason, and they don't need to interrogate that reason to decide if it's valid. They just accept it. I need space right now. Okay, I'm here when you're ready. That's it. No demands for explanation, no guilt trips, no questions designed to make you prove your need is legitimate. But the people who don't respect you, you could lay out your entire trauma history, complete with documentation and witnesses, and they'd still find a reason why your boundary is unreasonable. Because they don't actually care about understanding. They care about getting their way. And your story is just another obstacle they're trying to negotiate around. So stop giving it to them. Stop bleeding your history to people who won't even bandage it. Stop sharing your sacred pain with those who'll only use it to hurt you more. Your story is yours, and you get to decide who's worthy of hearing it. Not everyone who asks deserves to know. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every demand for explanation deserves to be met. Why do you need space? Because I do. Why don't you want to come? Because I don't. Why are you setting this boundary? Because it's my boundary to set. These are complete answers. They feel insufficient only because you've been conditioned to believe that your autonomy needs justification. It doesn't. Buddhism teaches that you are inherently whole. Your needs are inherently valid. Your boundaries are inherently yours. No explanation required. And the sooner you start living this truth, the sooner you'll stop exhausting yourself trying to justify your existence to people who've already decided you're not enough. So practice this today. Set a boundary without explaining it. Say no without justifying it. Protect your energy without giving everyone access to why you need protecting. And when they push for more, when they demand the story, when they make you feel like you're being difficult, remember this: the people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries without needing to peek behind them. They'll trust that you know what you need. They'll honor your no without requiring you to bleed for it. Everyone else, they're not confused. They're just not used to you having boundaries they can't negotiate around. And that's their problem to adjust to, not yours to fix by over-explaining. Your story is sacred. Guard it. Share it only with those who've proven they'll handle it with care. And remember, you never have to use your pain as permission to protect yourself. You're allowed to have boundaries just because you want them. That's reason enough. Here's the sixth truth. Sometimes the most powerful response to someone demanding explanation is walking away. No justification, no closure speech, no final attempt to make them understand. Just leaving. Buddhism teaches about non-attachment, and one of the hardest things to detach from is the need to be understood by everyone, especially the people who hurt you. We think we need closure. We think we need to say our piece, explain our side, make them see what they did wrong. We think walking away without explaining is somehow cowardly or cold, but it's not. It's the ultimate act of self-respect. Because when you stay to explain yourself to someone who's already shown you they don't value your truth, you're not standing up for yourself. You're begging them to see your worth. And begging for basic respect from someone who refuses to give it is not closure. It's torture. Walking away without explanation is not giving up. It's refusing to participate in your own diminishment. Think about the relationships you've stayed in too long. The friendships where you kept explaining why you were hurt. The romantic relationships where you kept justifying why you needed more. The family dynamics where you kept trying to make them understand your perspective. How many times did you explain? How many different ways did you say it? How much energy did you pour into making them see you? And did it work? Did they finally understand? Did your explanation change anything? Or did you just exhaust yourself trying to make someone care who had already decided not to? Buddhism teaches that some people are not your people, and trying to force connection with someone who doesn't value you is like trying to plant flowers in concrete. You can pour all the water, all the nutrients, all the love you want, but nothing will grow because the foundation isn't receptive. Walking away is not failure, it's wisdom. It's recognizing that your energy is precious and some soil will never nourish your seeds. But we're scared to walk away without explaining. We're scared they'll think we're the problem. We're scared they'll tell a different story. We're scared of being misunderstood. So we stay. We explain. We defend. We try one more time to make them see. And all we do is give them more ammunition, more time to twist the narrative, more opportunities to make us doubt ourselves. Here's what you need to understand. People who are determined to misunderstand you will do so, regardless of how much you explain. They're not confused. They're committed to their version of events, and your truth is inconvenient to their narrative, so they'll reject it. No matter how clearly you state it, no matter how much evidence you provide, no matter how many times you rephrase it, they've decided who you are in their story, and your actual truth doesn't fit, so they'll discard it. And you trying to make them accept it is just delaying your freedom. Walking away without explanation is choosing yourself. It's saying, I no longer need you to validate my reality. I no longer need you to understand my truth. I no longer need your approval to close this chapter. It's powerful. And it scares people, because when you walk away without explaining, you take away their power to debate, to manipulate, to keep you engaged in the cycle. They can't argue with silence. They can't twist words you didn't say. They can't make you doubt a decision you're not defending. Your absence becomes your statement, and it's louder than any explanation you could give. Buddhism teaches that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is leave for yourself and for them, because as long as you're staying, trying, explaining, you're enabling a dynamic that serves no one. You're teaching them that your boundaries are negotiable, that your no can be worn down, that if they just push hard enough, demand enough explanation, guilt you enough, you'll give in. Walking away teaches them the opposite. Your no is final. Your decision is made, and it doesn't require their understanding to be valid. Will they be upset? Probably. Will they accuse you of being heartless, cold, unwilling to communicate? Maybe. Will they tell others that you just left without explanation? Let them. Because the people who matter, the people who truly know you, won't need their version of events. They'll know your character. They'll trust that if you walked away, you had good reason. And the people who believe their narrative over your character, they weren't your people anyway. So practice this. When someone demands explanation for a boundary you've already set, for a decision you've already made, for a door you've already closed, practice the pause. Feel the urge to explain. Notice the discomfort of their expectation and choose differently. Choose silence. Choose walking away. Choose protecting your energy over managing their reaction. It will feel wrong at first. You'll feel guilty, selfish, mean. That's the old programming. The belief that you owe everyone access to your reasoning, your feelings, your inner world. You don't. You owe yourself protection, respect, peace. And sometimes that means leaving without giving them the closure they think they deserve. Because closure is not something they give you. It's something you give yourself. And you can do that with or without their understanding. So today, if there's a relationship you've been trying to explain yourself out of, stop. If there's a person you've been trying to make understand why you're done, stop. If there's a situation you've been trying to justify leaving, stop. Just walk away. Your absence is explanation enough, and trust that the right people will understand without words, and the wrong people won't understand even with them. Walking away is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your freedom, the final truth, the one that brings it all together. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop defending your truth, when you stop justifying your existence, something shifts. Your truth becomes unshakable, not because everyone agrees with it, but because you no longer need them to. Buddhism teaches about inner refuge, the place within yourself that remains steady regardless of external chaos, the part of you that knows what's true without needing outside validation. And you access that refuge not by convincing everyone you're right, but by releasing the need to. Your truth is not a democracy. It doesn't need a majority vote to be valid. It doesn't require unanimous approval to exist. It simply is. And when you truly understand this, when you live from this knowing, you become unshakable. People can disagree with you. You remain steady. People can misunderstand you. You remain clear. People can reject you. You remain whole. Because your sense of self is no longer outsourced to their opinions, your truth is no longer dependent on their acceptance. Your worth is no longer determined by their approval. You know who you are. You know what you stand for. You know what you need. And that knowing doesn't waver just because someone else doesn't see it. This is freedom. Not the freedom of everyone understanding you, but the freedom of not needing them to. Think about the strongest people you know, the ones who move through life with quiet confidence, the ones who seem unbothered by criticism, unmoved by rejection, unshaken by misunderstanding. It's not because nothing ever bothers them. It's because they've stopped explaining themselves to people who've chosen not to understand. They've built an inner foundation so strong that external opinions can't topple it. They've cultivated self-trust so deep that others' doubt doesn't create self-doubt. They speak their truth once, and then they move forward, regardless of who comes with them. This is your invitation to stop performing your truth for an audience that's already decided not to applaud, to stop defending your reality to people who are committed to their version, to stop explaining yourself to those who've chosen not to listen. Just be, just know, just stand in your truth without needing it to be validated by anyone else. Buddhism teaches that enlightenment is not about gaining something new. It's about removing the obstacles to what you already are. And one of the biggest obstacles is the belief that you need external validation to trust your internal knowing. You don't. You never did. So today, make this commitment. I will speak my truth once, clearly, with integrity, and then I will release it. What others do with it is their journey. My job is simply to be authentic to what I know is true. I will not explain myself into exhaustion. I will not defend myself into depletion. I will not justify myself into doubt. I will simply be and trust that truth, like light, doesn't need permission to shine. This is your path back to yourself, not through more explaining, but through less. Not through more defending, but through release. Not through more proving, but through knowing. You are enough. Your truth is valid. Your boundaries are sacred. Your voice matters, not because everyone agrees, but because you exist. And that is the truth that needs no explanation. Let me bring together what we've discovered today. First, explaining is the language of low self-worth. When you over-explain, you reveal that you don't believe your truth stands on its own. Stop explaining. Start trusting. Second, silence after truth is power. The most powerful thing you can do after speaking your truth is nothing. Let it stand. Let it breathe. Let it be. Third, over-explaining is learned, not natural. You weren't born needing to justify your existence. Someone taught you that, and today you can begin unlearning it. Fourth, the right people won't need endless explanations. Those who truly value you will understand you the first time. Those who don't never will, no matter how much you explain. Fifth, you don't owe anyone your story. Your boundaries don't need your trauma as justification. You're allowed to say no just because you want to. Sixth, walking away is a complete sentence. Sometimes the most powerful response is leaving without explanation. Your absence is answer enough. And seventh, your truth becomes unshakable when it stops needing defense. When you release the need for everyone to understand, you find the freedom of simply being understood by yourself. These aren't just communication tips. These are acts of self-reclamation. Every time you stop explaining yourself to someone who's chosen not to listen, you take back a piece of your power. Every time you let your truth stand without defense, you strengthen your foundation. The Buddha once said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." And part of loving yourself is refusing to abandon yourself by over-explaining to people who don't value your truth. Stop begging for understanding from those who've chosen not to give it. Stop draining yourself trying to make people see you who've closed their eyes. Speak your truth once, clearly, and then be still. Your truth doesn't need an army of explanations. It just needs you to trust it. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who's exhausting themselves trying to be understood. And let me know in the comments which truth hit you hardest today. Thank you for being here. May you find the courage to speak less and trust more. May you remember that your truth needs no defense. You are enough, exactly as you are, without explanation.